The evening air felt heavy as Aisha sat on the couch, her phone in her lap, her fingers scrolling without purpose. The world outside her window seemed calm, but inside, everything was starting to feel suffocating. The quiet of the house pressed in on her as she glanced at the photo on her phone, a picture from her wedding day, full of smiles and promises. She stared at it for a moment longer, but the memory only made her heart ache. She set the phone aside and got up to check the time. Another late evening. Fahad was supposed to be home by now, but the minutes ticked by without him. She walked to the window and looked outside, as if maybe, just maybe, he might appear. She waited, but he didn't. It wasn't the first time he'd been late, but tonight it felt different. Tonight, the silence between them seemed louder. Her phone buzzed suddenly. She picked it up, hoping for a message from him. Maybe an apology for being late. Maybe an update. But when she saw the name on the screen, it wasn't him. It was an unknown number. Without thinking, she opened the message. Her heart stopped when she read the words. "Hey, it's over. I'm done. I'm filing for divorce. I've emptied our joint account. I've already moved on. Goodbye. Aisha." The room went quiet. The air around her seemed to freeze. She looked at the phone, blinked, and then looked again. It didn't make sense. It couldn't be real. Her fingers hovered over the screen, not knowing what to do next. Without thinking, she dialed Fahad's number. The phone rang endlessly. She tried again and again, but there was no answer. Her hand trembled as she lowered the phone, her throat tightening. She couldn't breathe. The silence was deafening. She stared at the message, hoping somehow it would disappear, that it was just a bad dream. But it didn't. It was real. Her chest felt like it was caving in as she opened the bank app. The same sense of dread washed over her, but she needed to see it. She needed to confirm it. Her hands were stiff as she tapped the screen. Her account opened. The balance read 0. The world seemed to tilt. The room blurred. She didn't know how long she stood there, staring at the empty account. It didn't feel real, but it was. Fahad had emptied it. He had taken everything, and now he was gone. Her mind raced, but all she could hear was the pounding of her heart. Everything they had built, everything they shared was gone in an instant. It felt like a punch to the gut. She placed the phone on the couch, her eyes never leaving the screen. She stood motionless for a long time, the tears threatening to fall, but not quite making it. Her thoughts spun, faster and faster, until they became a whirlwind of confusion and anger. How could he do this? How could he leave her with nothing after everything they had been through, after the promises he made to her? This was how it ended? She closed her eyes and let out a shaky breath. She couldn't stay here like this. Not like a victim. Not with her life turned upside down by a single message. The anger started to build, slow at first, but then stronger. It pushed the pain aside and filled her with something else, a desire to take back control, to not be the helpless one in this story, to make him feel what she was feeling, to show him that she wasn't going to just let this happen. She picked up her phone again, her hand steady this time. She opened the contact list, and there it was, Fahad's name still sitting at the top, the one person she thought she would never have to fear. Her finger hovered over his name, but it didn't click. She couldn't call him. Not yet. Not like this. She put the phone down and stared at her reflection in the darkened window. The woman she saw there wasn't the same one from hours ago. The hurt was still there, but it was starting to twist into something else. Something dangerous. She could feel it. This was the moment everything changed. The pain of betrayal was raw, but the need for revenge was growing stronger with each passing second. And for the first time, in what felt like forever, she wasn't afraid anymore. The anger surged within her. Fahad had taken everything from her, but now she would take back what was hers. The next few days passed in a blur. Aisha felt as though she were floating, detached from the world around her. The walls of their home which once held so many memories, now seemed to mock her, reminding her of the betrayal she was struggling to process. She would find herself sitting for hours, staring at nothing, waiting for something to happen. But nothing ever did. At work, her colleagues noticed her silence, the absence of the woman they once knew. They asked if she was okay, but she would always answer with a smile, pretending it didn't matter. It didn't matter anymore. The smile was a mask she wore, a mask she had perfected over the years. But behind it, everything was falling apart. Her phone sat on the kitchen counter, untouched, until the silence became too much to bear. One evening, in a fit of frustration, she picked it up again. The message was still there, the same cruel words staring back at her. Aisha's eyes narrowed. This was it. She had done nothing. She had let him walk away, and he had taken everything with him. But now, something inside her was stirring, a fire she hadn't known she had. She wasn't going to let him get away with this. She dialed Fahad's number. It rang once, twice, but there was no answer. She didn't care anymore. If he wasn't going to answer, fine. But she was done sitting back, pretending like everything was fine. She had to find him. She scrolled through her phone, going through their old messages, their pictures, trying to find something, anything that would help her understand why he had done this, why he had chosen to destroy everything they had built together. Nothing made sense. Then she remembered something. Aisha had kept a copy of their bank details, the ones they used to access their joint account. She wasn't sure why she had saved them. But now it felt like the only piece of leverage she had left. Her heart pounded as she picked up her phone again, pulling up the bank details. She needed to know where the money had gone. She needed to track it, find out where he had spent it, and maybe, just maybe, find a way to make him feel what she was feeling. The app loaded slowly, and Aisha's fingers flew over the screen as she accessed the transaction history. The more she scrolled, the angrier she became. He hadn't just taken the money, he'd spent it on things that weren't even necessary. Expensive dinners, shopping sprees, and the kind of indulgences they could never afford when they were together. It felt like a slap to her face, each transaction another betrayal. Her fingers trembled as she gripped the phone tighter, her breathing shallow. She felt a rush of rage flood her chest. This wasn't just about the money. This was about control, about him thinking he could walk away, thinking he could take everything from her without consequences. But he was wrong. He hadn't counted on her. He hadn't counted on the woman she was becoming. Aisha stood up from the kitchen table, her mind racing. She knew what she had to do. She couldn't just sit there and let him destroy her life. He had taken everything from her, her trust, her security, and now her peace of mind. But she could take something back. She would take back her power. The next day, Aisha drove to the building where Fahad had worked. The place was cold and sterile, a sharp contrast to the warmth of their home. She walked through the lobby with purpose, her footsteps echoing against the polished floors. She didn't care if anyone recognized her. She was here for a reason. The receptionist, a young woman who barely glanced up, asked if she could help. Aisha didn't hesitate. "I need to see Fahad," she said, her voice calm but firm. The receptionist looked at her with uncertainty, but Aisha wasn't going to wait. She walked past the desk and into the elevator, pressing the button for the top floor. Fahad's office was up there, the one place she had never been allowed to enter. But now, it didn't matter. She had nothing left to lose. The elevator doors opened with a soft ding. The corridor was empty, the lights flickering overhead as she made her way to his office. She knocked once. No answer. She knocked again, louder this time. Still, nothing. Aisha took a deep breath, her hand reaching for the doorknob. As soon as the door opened, she stepped inside. Fahad was sitting behind his desk, his back to her. He didn't hear her at first. She closed the door behind her. The soft, click of it echoing in the stillness of the room. "Fahad," she said, her voice steady but filled with an anger she could no longer hide. He turned around slowly, his eyes widening when he saw her standing there. He was caught off guard. "Aisha, what are you doing here?" he stammered, standing up, looking as though he had seen a ghost. Her lips curled into a cold smile. "I'm here to make you understand something," she said, stepping forward, each word calculated. "You thought you could just walk away, take everything from me, and leave me to pick up the pieces. But you were wrong." Fahad took a step back, his face flushing with guilt, but Aisha didn't care. She had no sympathy left for him. "Now, you're going to feel the consequences," she said. "And you're going to wish you never crossed me." She didn't know what she was going to do next, but she knew one thing for certain. This wasn't over. The game had changed, and this time she was in control. Aisha sat alone in the dimly lit cafe, her fingers wrapped around a warm cup of tea. The city outside buzzed with life, but she felt as if she were in a different world. Her mind kept drifting back to the confrontation with Fahad, his shocked face still fresh in her memory. He had begged her to listen, to understand, but she had stopped him before he could say another word. She had expected anger, expected to feel the rush of triumph as she confronted him, but instead, all she felt now was an empty sort of exhaustion. The fire of revenge that had burned so brightly inside her was starting to fade, leaving a quiet ache in its place. She had made him feel it. She had made him understand that he couldn't just take everything from her. But now, as she sat there, Aisha realized that the power she had taken back from him wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to fix the broken pieces of her heart. It wasn't enough to fill the hole he had left behind. The door to the cafe opened, and a familiar face stepped inside. Her best friend, Zainab, walked toward her with a concerned look. Aisha gave her a small smile, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. Zainab sat down across from her, her gaze searching Aisha's face for some hint of what was really going on. "You okay?" Zainab asked, her voice soft but knowing. Aisha didn't know how to answer. "I thought I needed to destroy him, but I don't feel any better. I just feel lost." Zainab reached across the table, placing a hand over Aisha's. "You don't need to destroy him. Aisha, you need to rebuild yourself." The words hung in the air between them. And for the first time, in what felt like forever, Aisha allowed herself to truly listen. The anger, the desire for revenge, had consumed her, but Zainab's words felt like a lifeline. She didn't need to keep fighting. The real battle was inside her, the battle to find peace. "I've been so focused on making him pay," Aisha said, her voice shaking slightly. "But I forgot about me. I forgot what I deserve." Zainab smiled gently, her hand still on Aisha's. "You deserve happiness. You deserve peace. And you'll find it not by destroying him, but by letting go." Aisha's breath hitched as she nodded, a weight lifting from her chest. The first real step toward healing had begun, not with revenge, but with acceptance. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in a long time, she was ready to walk it. As she stood up to leave the cafe, a new sense of purpose filled her. The past wasn't something she could erase, but it didn't have to define her. She was done being broken. She was done being someone's victim. Aisha took a deep breath and stepped into the world outside, her heart lighter than it had been in weeks. There was a future waiting for her, one that she could shape on her own terms.